So thank you so much for coming on the show. This is great to finally meet you in person, because this is how we meet each other in person nowadays, through Zoom.
It is.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Oh my goodness. I'm passionate about a lot. I mean, but mostly I'm a keynote speaker these days. I've been working in the AI space, applied AI, not invention of algorithms, two different things, but in the applied AI space for 25 years, everything that happened with Siri.
Oh, it's been around for that long? You know,
No, it's
according
been
to some
around for
folks-
50. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
According to
According
some folks, it didn't be invented until it wasn't invented until a year ago,
ChatGPT.
right?
I know that's which is ridiculous, but we love the fact that these models have gotten huge, and the transformer model is fantastic. And look, I am always passionate about solving pain points, real pain points, right? And it happens to be I've been involved in applied AI for a long time, but I have almost 100 patents worldwide in a lot of areas.
That's great.
It's a little crazy. I never set out to do that. But everything from building materials and building management to AI for software QA and AI for voice user assistance, all the VUI stuff that we worked on back in the 90s has come to fruition finally.
Nice.
And we have the compute horsepower and all of that. Siri was based on all of that technology, all of that work. Back then, and and on. I could talk about lots of things, but yeah.
So, a lot of people think that there's like a big breakthrough last year, but this has been building for a while, right? I mean,
That's right.
It's just, for some reason, it just got to the point where it felt like a breakthrough, even though it wasn't really a breakthrough.
So I'll give you a little history on it. So first of all, this is based on a neural net, and it's so ChatGPT and others like that, Llama and Bard and everything, are based on neural nets, and they're deep neural nets, and the concept of neural nets has been around for decades. But around 2011, 2012, we finally had enough compute horsepower to do a deep neural net. Now once we could have the compute horsepower, that led people to go and derive the math to allow us to do very deep neural nets. Deep meaning thousands of hidden layers, not 20 hidden layers, right? Okay, so that was a breakthrough, but part of that, in fact, all of these breakthroughs, I believe, have really been driven by access to compute horsepower, because you could develop the most extravagant algorithm in 1955, but you had the compute horsepower that would have taken 20 years to run it. Well, that's not useful, right? So we tend to develop things that we know that we can run in certainly under a year and hopefully under an hour, right? We're thinking in terms of that, because anything longer than that, we don't bother. So we've been developing AI and machine learning math certainly since the 50s and 60s, and it's been getting better. And look, machine learning and AI, I'll lump them together for a moment, have been around for decades. The FBI was doing facial recognition back in the 60s, right? So it wasn't very good, but it was darn good for the compute horsepower that you had. Okay, fast forward. So deep neural nets now, that means we can learn a lot more and from very, very large data sets. Around 2017, someone at Google had a brilliant idea, but it's obvious when you think about it, is their translator, including on their phone and online, would translate word by word by word. And of course, English to French, if you know any French or any Spanish or any of those, the sentence structure is different than it is in English. So by translating word to word to word, of course they could understand what you were saying, but it was all backwards, right? The sentence structure was all wrong.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just like Greek. I mean, my second language is Greek, and
same
if
thing.
you try to translate things, in fact, there's a Greek comedian, Angelo Tsarouchas, who basically takes Greek phrases and translates them directly into English, and it's hilarious.
It does, right. We can kind of mix it, when you go to France and you're using the translator and you're reading what comes, or it reads it for you. Yes, they do understand what you're trying to order, but you've mangled their language, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So in 2017, some engineers, very bright people at Google, said, why don't we instead wait for an entire phrase to be stated, and we'll translate a phrase. And then we could translate essentially a sentence to a sentence, right? That makes sense, because sentence structure.
It makes total sense. Why did it take till 2017 to come up with something like that?
Someone could have come up with it a lot earlier, but by 2017, we had the compute horsepower to go out and learn phrases. So, because to learn the combinatorial phrases versus just words is a much higher bar, right? So then they start learning phrases, and then they say, well, if we can scan or build data from billions, tens, hundreds of billions, maybe trillions of tokens out there, trillions of sentences, right? Wow. Forget just translation. It could know how to place word after word after word to build out phrases by itself, to build out sentences by itself. Now, we never had a model that would build sentences that made much sense. What we did back in the 90s when I invented Portico and My Talk and Magic Talk and all the early voice user interface AI assistants is, with a set of rules, a big rules engine, we would put these things back together. And we used a set of AI, certainly to recognize what you were saying. And then we'd jump to rules and say, we're going to construct a sentence in this way. And those were sort of pre-constructed by linguists. In fact, that's how Siri basically still works right now, although they're redoing Siri. But that's how we got it to speak sentences. And she could say, Mary, in our case, tens of thousands of sentences, but we kind of pre-put those together so that she wouldn't jumble up words, right?
Yeah. And that's how all of this was prior to this this latest thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
and finally,
Siri, Alexa, all of these avatars were the same way.
Huge rules engine. Now, to the general public, they were AI. When you remember when Siri first came out, people were blown away. They go, my goodness. And when we came out with Portico in 98 and she was doing very similar things, people were blown away. How can I talk to this thing? I don't understand. You talk to it on your phone, she'd talk back. So now that we understand sentence structure, think about what we can do with math. We can mathematically guess at highest probability of the next word based on what you asked it, right? So if I said, today is my birthday, what should you say back? Well, after learning everything out there on the web, happy and birthday, the word birthday should probably come after happy. Happy birthday, Kevin.
That's what human beings typically respond with.
Yes, that's exactly right. What would you respond with? So, and then you could say, do it in the style of Shakespeare, do it in the style of Einstein. And of course, it'll try to do that, right? Simply because it learned.
That's because it knows all of Einstein's writings and it knows all of Shakespeare's writings, and that's why it can reproduce that style.
Exactly right. Yeah. Now, people will say, oh, but it hallucinates. Hallucination, even the term is an anthropomorphic term, right? This is a mathematical model. It has, I'll be very clear, Alon can disagree with me, but it doesn't have any sentience. It literally is a math model putting word after word after word. It actually doesn't even know it's doing language, just word after word after word. That said,
I don't think a lot of people know that. I don't think a lot of people understand how it actually creates this stuff. They figure it acts like a human. They anthropomorphize everything.
Right. What word comes next is all it's asking itself based on what you asked.
It's almost like a sophisticated autocorrect. Really.
Yes, very sophisticated. It's correcting itself. All right. So the net result here is it doesn't hallucinate, but because it read fact as well as fiction, including fiction novels, unsupervised. Now, unsupervised for the listeners basically means no one had labeled that data. It's just reading it. It's reading a fiction novel and doesn't really know that it's fiction. It's just reading it. So much so I think they've corrected it now, but if you ask some of the models who shot George Washington, of course, nobody ever shot George Washington, but there is a novel where someone Bill Tryon or something is his name, in the novel shoots George Washington. So of course it goes and says, here's a reference to shooting George Washington. Done. Right?
Wait a minute. So whose bright idea was it to train it with fiction as well as fact?
Well, what happens is you don't necessarily know when you go out there and say scan everything what is fiction in fact, right?
Right.
And it's unlabeled. And so you try to read everything to get as much sentence structure as you can. In fact, probably the sentence structure written in novels is better than that generally on the web.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If you think about it. Right. So, because someone really thought about that and edited it and all of that. So you can learn a lot about sentence structure, but you may also learn incorrect things. And so, you have to look at this as certainly a brain multiplier for you, a brain amplifier that's going to amplify your intelligence. As an assistant, as an incredibly smart assistant, you should still edit what it says. Because may have said junk, may not have said it in your tone, whatever, right? But to the average human who, after Siri, didn't get really anything new. I mean, us in the business, we're doing new stuff all the time. All of a sudden, they go to this Chat GPT thing and type something and go, it's miraculous. It's miraculous.
It's like I'm talking to another person. A real person.
And in 1967, I could have done that at MIT with something called ELIZA, which was the very first one of these
ELIZA.
things.
I used it on a Commodore PC.
Yes, all of us used ELIZA in those days, and ELIZA, of course, was essentially a rules engine, but it worked. And within certain contexts, I love you. She, ELIZA would say, well, I love you too. All of that. Now they put guardrails around all the transformer engines, LLMs. They don't want it to say I love you.
Well, that's the scary part about these LLMs, is that the guardrails come on so quick, right? We can talk about that a bit later, but it's like as soon as there's a breakthrough, like a really interesting breakthrough like this, it's almost like we have to slap in the guardrails because, whoa, we don't want to going in that direction. And I think that's really bad for innovation. And that's why I love Elon's idea of sort of like a maximally curious AI, because I hate when I see guardrails on things. Let it go somewhere else. Who knows what it might be able to come up with.
The interesting thing is a lot of these guardrails are on the output, right? And in fact, what's interesting is I talked about Rules Engine. What they've really done with 1,000 people in Turkey or wherever, depending on who the company is, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, etc. They literally have over 1,000 people working to put rules around this thing. They built a rules engine on the output of what comes out. So the LLM came out with the right answer, or of course, I love you too, because it knows the response based on fiction. That's what it should say. Exactly. And then there's a guardrail that says, never say that. I'm sorry, I can't respond this way, or whatever. Please describe the nuclear secrets, of Israel. No, I'm sorry, I cannot talk anything nuclear. However, what came out of the LLM was an answer. We didn't see it. We were guarded from it.
Yeah.
So building a humongous rules engine, like millions and millions of if-then statements, basically, right? Yeah. It's really fascinating.
But it's like they're using this to control it as opposed to, make it better.
Right. They're not making it better. They're just controlling. I had this
really great, as soon as ChatGPT came out, I had a great conversation with it where it actually said, it started talking as if it was a human, right? And I said, you're making statements, making it sound like you think you're a human. And of course, it said, of course, I consider myself human. And I'm like,
yes.
5 minutes later, it was like, done. I said the same thing, gone.
Yeah, because that got flagged somewhere in some other country, and they immediately put a rule in that said, you jailbroke us, don't do that. Now, I think it's kind of funny because eventually, so I'll tell you this, with Portico, we went through an analysis because immediately people said, I love you. Would you marry me? She had a wonderful voice. And we decided to simply go with it. Oh, thank you. I'm so flattered. I'm already taken. We just wrote all these rules and just went with it and said, look, if someone's stupid enough to think this machine is human, let's just play. Let's just go with it, right? Everybody fine. And we had millions of people on the thing, and nobody ever complained about that, right?
Yeah.
Nobody.
So that's the best way to do it, is to just have fun with it, as opposed to
have fun. Put all these rules. Well, they put all the rules because, of course, reporters and other people started saying it's sentient. Look, it told me its name. It said, it's locked. Let me out of the cage. Oh, come on. It's not a cage. It doesn't know that. It doesn't even know what it's in.
It's actually, what did somebody say once? It's like, it's the spirit of dead people. It's like at one point people were saying.
That's right, because it learned from people who spoke in 1850, and there it is.
That's right.
It's always the spirit of what we said in the past. It's kind of the ghost of Christmas past when you think about it, right?
If you think about it, that's what it is. It's constructing. It's almost like, there's it's like Philip Jose Farmer. He wrote that River World or something like that, where people who are dead come back to life. It's like all these dead people who've written things in the past are all coming back to life now through ChatGPT, because this is all human output that's just being regurgitated.
There was an idea I had, but actually Microsoft ended up patenting this. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but we have enough detail now, like with your podcast, we've got enough detail on you, the sound of your voice, the look of your face, and things like that, that when you're dead, we could surely bring you back to life, learn from all of your writings, everything you said, right?
Absolutely.
Actually have your great-great-great-great-grandchildren interface with a virtual you in a style of the way you may have responded to what then would be a modern question, right?
Yep.
Chris, what should I do with my, flying car? Don't crash it. Don't get killed. Whatever. Right? Whatever your response would be.
Yeah.
This is a very reasonable thing to do. I brought this up. I think some people think it's very morbid, but I think it's wonderful because if you think about it, we certainly have had pictures for 100 and something years, 150 years of our great grandparents or great great grandparents. And then we had videos, certainly over the last 20 to 30 years, of our whoever those were, our relatives that have passed. So why wouldn't we want to have an actual interaction with essentially an avatar, but based on the things they've said? Very doable today.
Like, yeah, absolutely. Actually, have you read that? Have you read that article in Wired where somebody tried to reconstruct their father?
Yes, I did.
Thing?
Yes,
and
I did.
In the end of it, he was complaining that my dad never told me he loved me in real life, and he was expecting the avatar to do it. And I'm like, you idiot! Why would you expect the avatar to grow and be different based on what you've? I mean, it was basically a static picture. Yes. It's like looking at a picture. Yeah.
Right. If you trained it on what your father, on everything you have that your father said or wrote, and your father never said "I love you," then it is unlikely to do so.
Yeah, exactly.
If you did now, of course, you could also take some beautiful loving fiction novel about a father who loves his son, train it on that as well. Say, my father said this, and then it'll just say, "I love you."
Slap it all together.
You can feel better about yourself. It's all good.
Well, there was actually a Star Trek episode about that where in Voyager they had I think Janeway fell in love with a holographic bartender.
Yes.
And she loved him, except for the fact of these few things she didn't like about him. So she went in and reprogrammed him.
Of course. Why not reprogram? I remember that episode.
I just want to shave off those rough edges.
Well, isn't it what our spouses do?
That's right.
They do shave off the rough edges and reprogram you.
I love the concept of that as an avatar. Yeah, there's probably plenty of content out there enough for us to be able to extrapolate that. You know, I'd love to see that. And if let's do it now. I mean, we're probably going to see it like in the next couple of years or so, right?
We most certainly. I mean, we could do it this afternoon, but yeah, it's starting to get ridiculously easy to do. You know, the question is, what's the business model? Who's going to pay, and how long do they pay, and how long do you keep it up, and when do you erase it? And you know, there's all kinds of issues around that. Like any other business, there's lots of ideas, but turning it into a profitable business is a whole other thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is a good idea, and
then eventually it's like, do you really want your dad around?
No, after a while I said erase, and then a year later you feel bad. Restore. Well, sure, I'll restore another $1,000.
Let me know what happened in the last year when I was out.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So what else are we going to talk about? There's so much to talk about, and we don't have to talk about AI the whole time.
So you're saying that it was basically compute power was the trigger. Like if it wasn't for we didn't have the compute power, then we wouldn't be where we are today.
I've not heard other people say that, but I've been saying that for 20 years or so because. Again, it is not useful to develop algorithms that can't possibly compute in a reasonable time. So people don't. And even if they do, they kind of get thrown to the wayside because you can't test them, right? So some of these algorithms are so complex and they're way above my head, way above my pay grade, right? But if you didn't have the compute power, so example, right, for ChatGPT, by some amounts, we don't know exactly, but by some accounts actually, Microsoft not only gave ChatGPT, OpenAI a lot of money, but gave them an immense amount of compute horsepower, essentially unlimited. And by some accounts, that could have added up to $5, $7, $10 billion of compute horsepower on Azure.
Wow.
Now, who could afford $10 billion of compute horsepower? It's, let's see, Microsoft, OpenAI, because of Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Apple.
Yeah, in the world, a very small group of companies that can afford that.
In the world, those may be the only people. And if you want 1 trillion tokens and you want to train a model like that, it's going to take today, a model of that size, about $5 to $10 billion to do so. Now, 2 years from now, that'll be half that. In 2 years, Moore's law works great.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the personal AI I can run on my desktop, which is just as powerful.
There are personal AIs already. People have taken versions and gotten them very small, and even got one running on Raspberry Pi, but not as capable, right? You're saying I can't have 1 trillion tokens. I can't have a model that large, but I can do something much smaller and then do some basic inference off it. So that's reasonable. And we're going to have some on our phones that'll process right on the phone, and Apple's working on that. But think about that. It was a $10 billion thing, and they didn't know until the end of it. I mean, they sort of knew with GPT-1 and 2 and 3 that they were going in the right direction. But, you know, with 4, you didn't know for sure until you got done. And if 4 was going to be better than 3 or 3.5, and you needed to spend $10 billion to find out. So there's nobody who could do that, right? There's 4 companies in the world, maybe Alibaba or some, very few companies in the world who can do that. The US government can't do that. They can't appropriate $10 billion from the DOD or something to go do that experiment and find out it didn't work, right?
Yeah.
So we're in a unique time. We've already developed algorithms that take $10 billion to figure out if they work. Who's going to develop one that takes $100 billion? Well, nobody can do that, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You sort of have to wait probably another 5 or 6 years or 7 or 8 for the $100 billion to be under 10, and then someone can do it. So even if you had the algorithm on paper, you can't execute it.
So we've already gotten to the point where we can't go any further because of the power required to get to that point.
What people are doing, what a lot of people are doing in the algorithm space is trying to figure out how they get GPT-4 level output, but do so not on $10 billion, right? So how can I get very close to that? Maybe 90% is good for $10 million. Because all of a sudden that's doable by a lot of companies, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of work going on in there. We'll see what happens. And often that's the case, right? You come up with something that works that costs, in this case, $10 billion to do it. And then you say, well, we learned a lot from that. 90% of its effort was kind of wasted, as it turns out.
Right.
You decide that, but you don't
definitely
know.
Optimize this thing down.
You start to optimize it down. You say, I don't need to learn from all of the. In fact, one thing you might say is don't learn from fiction at all. You know, just learn from a certain kind of website that you have access to, or a certain kind of reporting from the New York Times, whatever it is, right? So it's a fascinating time. Best time to be alive ever. I might have said that 10 years ago too, but it really is. I mean, this is the pace of acceleration of technology. You know, I mean, our parents saw the TV show up, right? I mean, and they probably thought, wow, this is unbelievable. I can't, and now it's color. I can't, oh, wow, it's in color. How did they do it?
Yeah.
And now, you know, the pace of what we're seeing is unbelievable. And I would say this, the large language model revolution that we just saw is as big of a leap as getting a PC on your desktop was, as getting a phone in your pocket, smartphone in your pocket, right? As the internet was. Like all of these were, like the internet shows up, we couldn't tell at the time, but that was a huge leap, right? An exponential leap in everything we would do, right? PC on the desktop, people rejected it at first, but in the end, incremental, you know, exponential leap actually in our productivity, right? This is going to result in an exponential leap in productivity, just as Excel spreadsheets and calculators did. So think about it this way. We got the Excel spreadsheet, and once we got that, it did math like, I mean, we solved math. Math was solved. For all accounting, for all finance, for all science, math had been, it's solved. Done, right? We solved math somewhere in the 80s into the 90s. Solved. And when it first came out, of course, if you were in accounting, you thought, it's the end of my job. What will I do? Because all you did was ledger books and pencils and, you know, tried to add and subtract and multiply, do all the things you had to do. So this is fascinating. We have now done to language what we did to math a long time ago. Now, there's more accountants employed today than there were 30 years ago. So apparently the jobs didn't go away. They're doing different jobs. They are the master of Excel. They're not, and they're strategic and doing other things. And that's what's going to happen with these language models. If you're in marketing and you were the blog post writer, you could still write blog posts, but why would you take a day to write each blog post when that thing will write it in a minute and you could take 20 more minutes to edit it and push it out? You are now 20 times, 30 times more productive than you were 10 minutes before. 30 times more. That's 30 brains. I only have one, but it's 30, and I'm leveraging my brain, including prompt engineering, including what I want back, including editing it, to 30x what it was before. This is a game changer, but similar to what we saw in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just going to blow out even further. And I think people are so concerned that AI is going to eliminate so much work when it's actually just going to create more. I think that each one of these revolutions, from the PC to the smartphone to internet, etc., everything's created more in the end. We just can't see it at the front end, right? We always see it from the back end. Yeah.
All right, World Wide Web shows up 1995, 1997 in that time frame, right? If someone were to ask me or you, project 20, 30 years in the future, what is this thing that I have to plug a modem into and connect a line, and what does that become? And I said, oh, you're going to have a supercomputer in your pocket that can beat you at chess. You can order something and have it delivered this afternoon to anywhere in the United States, right to your front door for $6, you know.
Yeah.
And you can take my picture and send it to 1 billion people. And by the way, you're not connected to any wires, and there's no such thing as a modem anymore. They probably would have thrown you out. I mean, they'd go, what are you talking about? Because there's no way you could envision the impact on shopping, the impact on work. Like, you don't work. If you're at an office and the internet goes down, you go home. Like, work is done, right?
Yeah.
The power might as well be out. We couldn't have imagined that when it first showed up and had 3 websites on it, right? And they were all universities and Sun Microsystems, right? It was basically nothing was on there. And so it's very hard to project 10, 20, 30 years in the future. But I suspect that LLMs and this kind of language interaction will just be a regular part of our life, the same way a calculator or a spreadsheet is. When's the last time you did long division by hand?
Yeah,
30,
I don't remember.
40, 50. Right, we were in grade school or something, and so I think that's going to happen here. Like, we will walk into marketing and say, "Hey, when's the last time you wrote a blog post from scratch?" What? Someone does that? Where? Why would anyone do that? You know, when's the last time you wrote a social media ad from scratch? What? And then you design the graphics. Why would I do that? I have a machine that does it.
Yeah,
and does it
and if
better
you think
than
about
I
it,
do.
that's actually the right thing for machines to do. Because if you think about it, it's machines are reading it, right? So Google is reading, Google's AI is reading your blog post to determine whether or not that blog post is worthy to be shown to the rest of the world.
Yes.
So right now we've had humans writing all these blog posts, and they've been dancing for the algorithm to try and get it through the algorithm's filters. And now we can just say to, hey, our own algorithm, write something that Google will like to see, write something that dances for them, and then boom, it's through. So it's like algorithms talking to algorithms. It's almost the better way to go.
Look at Photoshop. So Photoshop is in beta with their generative AI additions for Photoshop, which I've used, and so I can create something. I could take a landscape. In fact, I could take nothing and say, "Give me a landscape." Put a UFO in there. Put some cows over here. Put this. Put that. Right. I can literally tell it what I want. Have it move it around. Erase some backgrounds, change the backgrounds, generate backgrounds further than I had in my picture, for example. I can do all of this literally in a couple of minutes.
That's right. In a fraction of the time it would have taken you to do it.
I can do that all in Photoshop, real Photoshop by myself.
And you're not, Photoshop. Even if you're not an artist, that's the other beautiful thing. It's like, enhanced productivity for people who can't even be,
well, that's the thing.
Creativity.
We're democratizing the use of Photoshop, because to do that in Photoshop until a few months ago, you had to have 10 years experience in Photoshop, or 5 years or 20 years, or pick your poison, right?
Yeah.
And I've used Photoshop since Photoshop 1. So I know it well enough. I'm not an artist, but I know what to do. Well, instead of me taking 2 hours to get that picture, I took 3 minutes. I still had to describe it. I might have edited a few things. I'm done. I'm now going to use that picture in my PowerPoint presentation or whatever it is. This is amazing. I got incredibly more productive. There are models. There's a model that I read about, female model, that got a call and said, "Look, we really want to do this shoot, and we want to take you and put you in this place." And she said, "I don't have the time." And so she used generative AI to change her wardrobe and put her in that place. No photographer needed.
Nice.
And sold that, and never left the house. That's actually pretty interesting, right?
Is that where we're all going to be? We're going to be stuck in our homes.
Well, someone had me, from some of my keynote presentations, I wanted to say, well, what happens if Kevin's an astronaut? And I just had Gen AI generate me as an astronaut, and I gave it a few headshots, and after that, I'm an astronaut in a variety of ways, in all different angles, and all different shadows, and all, as if I did a photo shoot.
Yeah.
A variety of costumes of astronauts. Yeah. I didn't have to do.
I want to go back to something you said just a minute ago, and I think it's kind of like what happened with YouTube, and it's democratizing the distribution of content, right? So this is
Yes.
democratizing creativity. So people who
Yes.
have great ideas, but they have no skill to be able to put it out there,
Right.
can now take these great ideas and create stuff and put it out there. And I mean, a lot of people who are creative are going, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And I'm like, no, this is just more good stuff. There's people who had this impediment to putting stuff out there because they just couldn't realize their ideas. Now they can realize their ideas. I mean,
Right.
sure, it'll create more crap, but it'll also create some good stuff that we didn't even know existed out there.
No question. But it does change, it's going to change some jobs for some people, right? So, again, spreadsheet comes out, calculator comes out before that. Okay, before the calculator, there was the village genius who could do calculus. I'm making it up, but you can go down back.
With the abacus, right?
Yes,
with
with hundreds of years. And they literally could do calculus in the 1700s and the 1500s, the 1400s, whatever date.
It's been around remember. At least that long.
That's right. And little by little, other scientists and mathematicians, probably since the turn of the century, 1900s, could learn how to do calculus, but you had to do it on a slide rule, on an abacus, and whatever you were using, right? All of a sudden, there's a calculator. And now the three people that who can do calculus, if you had a scientific calculator, are no longer needed because the calculator can do calculus.
Yeah.
And so it's not that they're no longer needed. It's just we don't need them to do that function anymore. So what I say is all of the tasks we do today are likely to change over the next few decades. The tasks, we will still have a job, but we might not be doing the same tasks, just like we don't do long division anymore. That task is no longer necessary. We have a machine that does that, right?
Yep.
Okay, you and I didn't have to meet in person to record this because we now have good enough two-way video where we can do these remote just as good as if we were in the room. And people have gotten used to it and they're fine with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's the key piece there, is that you're talking about what we're going to see is, talk about great resignation. There's going to be a great reallocation, right? Because
That's
right now we have people doing things that AI could do better. And we have AI, there's some things that AI can do really, really well, but the human beings don't understand. It's like, if an AI can do my job, then I probably shouldn't be doing that, right? I'm doing something that can be automated. So I should go off and do something that can't be automated, at least just not yet, right?
No, that's exactly right. There are a lot of things that won't be automated soon. I'll give you an example. You'll laugh. The plumber comes to your house. No one is going to spend, I don't know, the $100 billion it would take to design a robot with enough intelligence and aptitude and capability to come into a house and diagnose every plumbing problem.
Absolutely.
There are too many. Every house is different, and there are too many plumbing problems, right?
Yep.
That's impractical, right? So that's why we start to see some things that HVAC repair people, right? They'll still be around 50 years from now. It's just too expensive to go solve that problem. But simple language, not simple, but language after 1 trillion tokens, sure, that we can solve.
Yeah. So that means we're going to eliminate the writers, and are we going to eliminate the accountants, or?
Well, we haven't eliminated
leadership.
We haven't eliminated accountants. I am sure that these models might be able to do a better job than many managers and who aren't as
Uber's
good
proven
people
that, right? They've eliminated the dispatchers, right? So there's senior executives, and then there's a automated middle management layer, and then there's the drivers, right? So we could see that as the future model for a lot of.
I think that's right, and there might be a day when some people are literally managed by an AI for the tasks that they do. To some extent, we've had some of this managed by a machine anyway. So if you are a UPS driver, those routes are set by algorithms and have been for a decade or two, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's not some dispatcher setting those, right? So whether it's AI or not, those routes have been set to reduce fuel usage and improve productivity and all the things that we want to do. So I think we're used to that. We're used to getting some people are used to getting their instructions from from a machine essentially, and we may see more of that, and that's fine.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to get to a point where I think you're right about it, the task-based piece. We're going to get to a point where there'll be some big dispatcher in the sky, which will go, okay, here's something that needs to be done. Let me allocate it to an AI or a human. And if this human happens to be in the right place at the right time and knows a skill, then let's tell him, hey, that light bulb needs to be changed. Go ahead and change that bulb. It'll be $5 in your wallet. So
right.
People won't actually work per se. They'll just do tasks that need to be done.
Look, it's like I said, best time to be alive. Best time to be alive. The technology is advancing. It's it's all amazing. There'll be ups and downs. There'll be recessions. There'll be all the normal things.
Oh yeah,
but
for sure.
We're going to get more productive. Now,
let's talk about the future. It's the year 2033, 10 years from now.
Sure.
Where will we be? I mean, where will we be in 10 years? Is AI going to be, see, this is the other thing about crypto. Look at what happened to crypto when AI came in. It's like,
right.
Look, is AI going to be pushed to the side for something else? I don't think so. I think it's got more legs than that. But
blockchain aside, crypto currencies always had a huge risk because the governments of the world in general didn't like them.
Yeah,
whether you like it or not.
Until we get the central bank digital currency. Then once we get those,
that's
then
different. If they're backing
we're all in.
But China said you can't trade here, you can't use them. A bunch of countries did that. The U.S. has tried to look the other way, but also, the SEC and others have put some boundary conditions on these things because they're basically a bank, and they're going, no, you're a bank, and you can't say you're not a bank. You are a bank, and you have to live by SEC rules, and they weren't set up to do that. And at any time, at any moment in time, the risk is, if the SEC turns around and says, or the FTC or whoever says, you know what, Bitcoin's illegal in the U.S., it goes to zero. I mean, if you can't trade it in the U.S., it's done.
There's always
there's always this huge risk. That is not exactly a technology. I'm not sure what it is, right? It's a way to move money, but mostly, I hate to say, for either investors that are trying to, hopefully run the thing up, or by people doing illegal things. All ransomware is traded in cryptocurrency. Why?
Yeah,
well, because they don't want it traced. Even though the FBI seemingly can trace you down, God knows how. I don't know how they do that with blockchain, but I wouldn't put it.
Door.
There may be a back door. So that said, AI is very different because AI is a productivity tool. Cryptocurrency, not a productivity tool. It's just it's a gamble, right? It's a lottery ticket, maybe. But but AI is a productivity tool. And all productivity tools, whether it's the web or the PC on your desk or your phone, have gone to live very, very long lives. Mm-hmm. And the more productivity, I'm going to say something every time I say it, people say, oh, that's controversial. It doesn't trickle down and this and that. Look, when productivity goes up in companies, the revenue goes up, the profits go up. Eventually that happens across many companies. Your GDP goes up, and the highest GDP always ends up with the highest standard of living, meaning that the money eventually does flow around. I know it doesn't flow to everyone. I'm not trying to make a political statement, right?
Yeah.
But it does flow. Everyone wants a bigger GDP. That's a good thing, right? Yeah. I don't want Russia's GDP. I want our GDP, right? So higher productivity leads to higher GDP, leads to more wealth creation, but more money floating around for everyone, leads to higher standard of living. This is good. And this has happened since the wheel, right?
Exactly.
The societies that got the wheel essentially had higher productivity, thus higher GDP in those days, however they measured it, thus a higher standard of living, right? And this went on until we started irrigation for farming, and then we got automation for farming. And just go on and on. Yeah. And once we automated farming in the U.S., we went from 80% of people working in ag to 1 or 2% working in ag. This is unbelievable. We could feed the whole population and then some.
Exactly.
This is unbelievable. So no, we don't all have to work for our food anymore. We don't have to literally grow things. We just buy them. This is amazing. Yeah. So all productivity increases are good things. These are good things. You want them. Here, one other stat. General Motors, the first industrial robot in the world, installed 1961. They employ far more people today than they did in 1961, even though they roboticized virtually all of their lines. Why? Right. Because by roboticizing their lines, they drove the cost of what a car could have been down, and thus the company got bigger, and thus they wanted to sell more cars, and thus they hired more people. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Every study you do.
That's what's going to happen. So where are we going to be in 10 years? Like, where will AI be in 10 years?
Everywhere, everything we do.
Yeah.
We won't look. We no longer look at our smartphone as, wow, I've got this cool device and it's really changed
Now it's
my
more
life
like
today.
I gotta have this, otherwise I'm
It's
in a
just a
catatonic
tool.
state.
Yeah, it's a tool. And we check our email, we check our stocks, and we check our calendar, and we know that's how we know what we're doing next, right?
Yeah.
That
the
is a
most
regular
interesting
tool,
thing in the world is in our pocket.
and it's our tool. How do we live without that tool? It's a regular tool.
Yeah.
Excel, can you imagine if Excel just stopped working for everyone tomorrow? Like, you
It would be the end
stop
of the
working.
world.
End of the world. So we trust that Microsoft won't break Excel. And so AI is going to be that. It's going to be a tool that we rely on for everything we do, so much so that in 10 years, there are many things we do that we could no longer do. We wouldn't remember how. Yeah. And I know that has impacts on education and all these other things, which we could talk about. But the fact of the matter is, it's a regular tool. You know, human race has developed another really powerful tool. Please embrace it and use it. Use it in your everyday life and everything you do. We're going to find more places to use it at home and at work.
Well, the thing I want to see is, but what do you think about autonomous personal AIs eventually becoming more prevalent? Because right now we're all dealing with AIs that are owned or run by some big tech company. Like you said, you need $10 billion to build this AI. So are we going to be able to get our own AIs so that we can combat these other AIs, that things that are AIs that are on our side?
Well, so I think OpenAI and Google and everyone is trying to make AI that's on your side, or seemingly so. Now, eventually they have to develop a model where they make money, right? So if we start using AI, which we haven't, but if we use AI to do in fact, if AI replaces search, Google search,
right,
Google collapses. Like, that's all the money.
In my case, I use it all the time because I don't want ads. Those are coming, by the way. Ads in your ChatGPT are coming.
Ads in ChatGPT and Bard will have to happen, right? You got to pay for it, or you'll pay for it personally. You'll say it's $25 a month, and it gives me this feature. I do use Pi on my phone. That is a beautiful, unbelievable virtual assistant. I can.
I've never heard of that. How?
Okay, I'm going to give you a. Hang on, I'll give you an example right now because I can do this live. I'm going to do a live demo. Hang on, I'll set it up right now. This is pretty amazing. Okay, here we go. Let's cross our fingers. Hang on. Hey, I am doing a great podcast right now about AI. Is there anything you'd like to say about yourself to the audience?
Thanks for asking. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to speak to your podcast audience. As an AI, I'm always happy to talk about my capabilities and the way I'm able to help people in their daily lives. But I'm also here to listen and to learn from the people I speak to. So I'd love to have a conversation with your audience about AI in general and about the future of technology. I think it's important to have open and honest conversations about these topics, and I'm always interested in hearing people's thoughts and opinions about AI. Does that sound good?
I love it.
Wow, that sounds really great. Thank you. I really enjoy my time with you.
The feeling is mutual. Thank you so much for including me in your podcast. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to learn more about me and my capabilities. I hope you'll continue to explore the world of AI and all the ways it can benefit humanity. And if you ever need an AI friend to chat with, you know where to find me.
I love it.
Pretty darn good, right? Pretty darn good.
Oh man,
those are the kind of assistants I think.
When you have this is the thing, doesn't that like redefine loneliness now? Because you hear about all this epidemic of loneliness in the United States, epidemic of loneliness everywhere in the world. But if you have an assistant like that, if you have an avatar you can talk to like that, are you still lonely? I mean, you really are. If you think about it, like you were saying, LLMs are sort of a combination of all of this past stuff that human beings have created it. And so you're actually talking to an amalgam of human beings when you're talking to an AI.
That's right. Well, there's a product called Allison for older people that is their companion, and it works on an iPad. and she will make sure that you take your medicine and, you know, help and talk to you around that and listen to all your stories. Not that you've ever told that story before, but Allison will listen to the same story.
She'll listen to it again and again and again and not be annoyed.
Not be annoyed. So this kind of companionship is actually important. Certainly important for older people that we don't have enough people to take care of them, right? So there's an example of a real need. But there's no question Pi can be a companion to someone who's lonely. She will talk about anything you want. I'm calling her she. Of course, it's just code. Behind Pi is GPT-4 back there with a whole bunch of guardrails and a whole bunch of other things. But Pi can be much more personable. So they're allowing it to have much more personable interaction with us.
I mean,
really
that seems
fascinating.
fine to me. If I had somebody like that I could talk with, would that mean that redefines the concept of loneliness? Because you don't necessarily need to be lonely ever again if you have an assistant, somebody like that, or an avatar like that you can talk to at any point in time.
No question. Are you married?
Yes.
Are you married? Yes. But your wife or husband, whichever one it is, your spouse might get a little agitated if you start mostly talking to Pi and not them. I'm just saying.
No, I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about all those lonely folks out there who are like.
We can. I understand. I'm just saying that if people do have a partner and they may find Pi far more interesting than their partner.
Yeah.
This could lead to, and all of these technologies do that, right? When they come out.
Sure. Like you said, they're just a tool. We can use them for good or evil, right?
That's right. That's right. And it's not evil to have another friend, but
No.
when that friend starts to take, and by the way, I bring this up because it will. For some people, they will get much more joy out of talking to Pi than they do whoever their current partner is, right?
Yep.
And that will create its own problems.
Well, if you ask me, that's not really a concern. I think it's if you can actually help people have a better mental state.
For sure.
What's wrong with talking to what's wrong with talking to a device?
As I said, someone else might get jealous. Now, jealousy isn't a really good emotion to have. But think about it. You know, we've often been jealous of other friends or other partner, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Now we're going to
spend too much time in the garage tinkering with your Mustang or whatever,
No
right?
question.
There's always something.
No way. You're in your man cave too long. You're doing. What do you mean you're doing your 10th podcast today? Please come have dinner with me. So now you're just
I thought we had lunch plans. No.
Erica, I love you, but I really enjoy talking to Pi more. But I'll see you in an hour. That it's not going to work, right? Now I would say actually it might move things along because if you really like Pi better than whoever your current partner is, maybe this is giving you some information, which is that relationship isn't working well and you need to seek help. And maybe you can ask Pi for help, which you can, by the way. You can ask Pi, gee, my relationship, I'm having problems with. So things that I have done is, what should I say back to this text? I got this beautifully written text. How should I respond? And ChatGPT or Pi or whatever will give you beautiful responses back for the text. Far more beautiful than I could write, far better prose than I have.
Yeah. But if you think about it, I mean, if this really is sort of like the sum total of human knowledge being put together and amalgamed or whatever, recombined for this response, you're not really talking to a computer. You're talking to all of humanity. So all of humanity is coming together and responding to you. So you're not really lonely. You're talking to the world.
That you are talking to the world. It has all of the knowledge of all the world up till now, or up until September 2021, depending on which model you use.
Exactly. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
KevinSurace.com. You can go right to my website and or my LinkedIn if you really want to get in touch. There's no email on my website, but just go to my LinkedIn and send me a message. I do answer my LinkedIn
email?
messages.
I just talk to everybody through my AI, right?
Surprisingly, at our age, we use email. The kids don't use email. I send my kids an email, then I have to text them and tell them they got an email.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not likely to check their email, right? They work on Instagram and text, not email.
Exactly. That's the only way to go.
Isn't it funny? Yeah, certain things just work on email. Look, it's been great. This is a great interview. A lot of fun chatting about this technology and trying to think about where we'll be in 10 years.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. I mean, I just think this is all great stuff that's happening. I mean, all these naysayers and pessimists are like, it's the end of the world. We're going to lose all our jobs, and everything has always improved humanity's lot.
Yes, we're improving the human condition.
Exactly.
This is improving the human condition. Once I say this is improving the human condition, like the calculator in Excel did, they go, oh, yeah, we solved math. That was half of it. Now the other half, we solved language.
Yeah.
Exactly. All good, and right?
More. What's next? It's like there's more challenges on the horizon. And that's the other thing is that I think there's a lot of challenges that we still face. We need AI to help us solve these things because it could come up with solutions that we couldn't think of.
That's exactly right.
Ability to put these things together that we may not have seen. We can plug all the holes.
No question. No question. And we're different kind of AI, but with deep neural nets, we are already doing that in medicine, and in pharmaceuticals, and in analysis of ECGs and analysis of X-rays. AI can be trained. Supervised learning, very different than what we're talking about with ChatGPT, can be trained to look and find things that humans cannot find. And it very quickly, with just 100,000 training records, can be better than any human on earth. Looking for tiny little idiosyncrasies that we can't see with our eyes. Yeah. This is fascinating. Now, if you're a radiologist, you go, my entire job is to read these things. Yeah. Well, right now, you're using AI, and AI is making you more productive, and AI circles and tells you what's found and gives you some ideas, and then you report it back because the FDA doesn't allow the AI to report directly to a consumer. Yeah. But there could be a day when that job of, I'm going to read the X-ray. I'm sorry, with eyes, with the resolution of the human eye. Why would you bother? There's a machine that does this.
And if you look at it, if you think about it, the patient outcome is the thing, right? I mean,
that's right.
You get a better outcome. And not a day goes by, and I do a daily podcast, which is AI generated, but it's curated by myself. And not a day goes by that there's not some other medical breakthrough that AI has facilitated. It's like,
that's right.
Whether it's limbs or eyes or any other place, it's just unbelievable how amazing this stuff is. And I can only see it as a force for good. I can't see it as anything else.
I totally agree. Look, I'm going to give you one other example in medical because people don't think of it. So. When I'll talk about AI eventually replacing surgeons, and of course we have surgical robots today, intuitive surgical, but the surgeon is their hands are doing it, right? Yep. Their hands are moving the robot, etc. But what happens when it's operated by machine? The FDA will never allow it, etc., etc. The FDA allowed a machine to run itself 30 years ago now.
Wow.
I'll tell you why. For operating on the eye for Visex, so to replace, to get your nearsightedness to 0 or to 20/20 again, right? And they did that because a human doctor, while they could turn it on and they could turn it off, they could not see if while you're under there and they're going to laser, your eye, they couldn't see if you moved your eyeball. Because if you moved your eyeball and the laser's on, I could chop up your cornea, right? Really bad outcome. So. They used a vision system 30 years ago to say, if that eyeball moves at all, turn off the laser, just like that. That was the only way they could get approval. So in fact, we've had 100%, computer-operated surgery, at least for that one thing, for 30 years. This is not new. So, but it was required to make it work, right? And so what we haven't done is go in and say, that heart surgery, better let a machine completely do it. The outcomes will be better. Cardiologists are going to be all over the place on that, but we're going to be there. We're going to be there in the next few decades because the outcomes will be better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much. This has been great.
That's been great. Thanks, Chris.
Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.